The moment someone gains power, something invisible wakes up inside them. Not greed, not ego, something quieter, more dangerous. It changes how they hear voices, how they remember promises, and how they see you. Today, we're uncovering the dark psychological reality of why power never leaves people the same again, and why almost no one escapes it unchanged. When a person gains power, the change does not begin in their actions, it begins in how their brain interprets the world. Psychological research shows that authority alters perception itself. The mind starts filtering information in a way that favors control, efficiency, and certainty. Situations that once felt emotionally complex become simplified. Nuance, faith. Power creates a mental shortcut where the brain prioritizes outcomes over understanding people. And this shift happens quietly, without the person realizing anything has changed. As power increases, empathy often decreases, not because the person suddenly lacks morals, but because their attention moves away from emotional signals. Empathy requires mental effort treating facial expressions, processing, tone, imagining another person's inner state. Power reduces the perceived need for that effort. The brain assumes distance equals safety, and safety reduces vigilance. Over time, emotional feedback from others feels less urgent, less informative, and eventually less relevant. Another critical change happens in how consequences are felt. For most people, social and emotional consequences create restraint. Disapproval, disagreement, or discomfort trigger reflection, but power acts like insulation. When decisions no longer produce immediate personal cost, the brain stops registering impact with the same intensity. Mistakes feel abstract. Harm feels indirect. This is why powerful individuals often underestimate the effects of their actions. They are not feeling the feedback loop that normally corrects behavior. This altered perception explains why people in power tend to interrupt more and listen less. Listening requires accepting that someone else might hold important information. Power shifts the brain toward assumption rather than inquiry. Confidence grows faster than accuracy. The mind starts mistaking authority for correctness, and disagreement begins to feel unnecessary or even threatening. Over time, being right feels more natural than being curious. Power rarely corrupts a person all at once. Instead, it creates psychological distance from emotions, from consequences, and from other people's realities. That distance slowly reshapes perception until the world feels simpler, quieter, and easier to control. By the time behavior visibly changes, the deeper shift has already happened. The person is not seeing the same reality anymore, and they often don't realize what they've lost until connection feels foreign. Self-doubt plays a critical psychological role in healthy decisions. It acts as an internal brake, forcing the brain to pause, evaluate alternatives, and consider consequences. When people feel uncertainty, the brain engages regions responsible for reflection, error detection, and social awareness. This discomfort is not weakness, it is a protective mechanism. It keeps individuals open to feedback and aware of their limitations. Without self-doubt, confidence loses its anchor to reality. Power gradually weakens this mechanism. As authority increases, external validation replaces internal questioning. Praise, compliance, and success signals tell the brain that its judgments are correct, even when they are incomplete or flawed. Over time, the brain learns that hesitation is unnecessary. The inner voice that once asked, "What if I'm wrong?" grows quieter, not because the person has become wiser, but because the environment stops challenging them. Certainty begins to feel earned rather than examined. This growing certainty is deeply rewarding on a neurological level. Confidence activates the brain's reward systems, releasing dopamine and reinforcing decisive behavior. The mind starts associating speed and firmness with competence. Reflection feels slow. Doubt feels inefficient. As a result, powerful individuals often make decisions faster, not because they understand more, but because they feel less psychological resistance. The absence of doubt feels like clarity. Even when it's actually oversimplification, as self-doubt disappears, the direction of questioning reverses. Instead of questioning their own assumptions, powerful people begin questioning others' motives, intelligence, or loyalty. Disagreement stops feeling like information and starts feeling like defiance. This is a critical psychological shift. Feedback is no longer processed as data, but as threat. The brain's defensive systems activate, protecting the self-image rather than seeking accuracy at T-stage. Mistakes stop serving their original function. For most people, mistakes trigger learning and adjustment. But when power has eliminated self-doubt, mistakes feel personal and distinct. They challenge identity rather than behavior. Instead of asking, "What can I learn?" the mind asks, "Who is attacking me?" This is why power can make people rigid, defensive, and increasingly disconnected from reality, because they are incapable of learning. But because doubt, the doorway to growth, has been quietly shut. When a person gains power, their brain begins to reorganize how it processes social information. Human relationships are complex and emotionally demanding, and the brain naturally looks for ways to reduce cognitive load. Power provides a shortcut. Instead of seeing people as full emotional beings with fears, histories, and inner lives, the mind starts categorizing them by role and outcome. Who contributes to success? Who slows progress? Who can be ignored? This is not cruelty by intention. It is efficiency by adaptation. Psychologically, this happens because power shifts attention away from mutual dependence. Ordinary relationships are built on reciprocity. We need others, and they need us. Power weakens that balance. When someone controls resources, decisions, or access, the brain no longer registers others as equals in exchange. Instead, it evaluates them based on utility. This mental shift reduces emotional engagement, because emotional engagement is most necessary when outcomes depend on cooperation rather than control. As this functional view deepens, emotional signals lose priority. Facial expressions, tone changes, discomfort, or distress no longer feel urgent. The brain filters them out as background noise. Neuroscience shows that empathy relies on attention. When attention is redirected toward goals and results, empathy does not disappear, it simply goes unused. Over time, the ability to emotionally register others weakens, much like a muscle that isn't exercised. This is why powerful people can make decisions that harm others without visible hesitation. The suffering is real, but it feels abstract. When people are reduced to numbers, roles, or obstacles, emotional consequences no longer activate the same internal response. The brain treats the situation like a strategic problem rather than a human one. Pain becomes collateral rather than personal, and detachment replaces guilt. The most unsettling part is that this transformation feels normal from the inside. The powerful person often believes they are being rational, fair, or even necessary. They may still think of themselves as good, but their perception has narrowed. When humans become functions, morality shifts from compassion to efficiency. And once the brain learns to see people this way, reconnecting with their full humanity becomes increasingly difficult, not because it's impossible, but because detachment feels safer, simpler, and more controllable. In environments where power determines influence and survival, behavior is shaped less by truth and more by perception. Psychological research shows that groups tend to reward individuals who appear confident, decisive, and dominant, even when those traits are not paired with accuracy or wisdom. Humility, which requires admitting uncertainty and limitation, often goes unnoticed or is misinterpreted as weakness. Over time, the brain learns which behaviors are reinforced and which are punished, and it adapts accordingly. As power increases, people receive more attention, compliance, and affirmation simply for who they are rather than what they say. This creates a subtle psychological distortion. Confidence begins to feel like competence, and visibility starts to replace substance. Narcissistic traits such as self-focus, certainty, and entitlement are not just tolerated in these environments, they are often rewarded. The brain responds to this reinforcement by strengthening behaviors that protect status, even if those behaviors reduce self-awareness. Humility becomes risky under these conditions. Admitting mistakes threatens authority, and vulnerability feels like an opening for a challenge. From a psychological standpoint, this triggers the brain's threat response. The powerful individual learns that self-protection matters more than self-correction. Instead of asking, "Was I wrong?" the mind shifts toward, "How do I maintain control?" This is not always conscious manipulation. It is adaptive behavior shaped by an environment that punishes openness. Feedback, which is essential for accurate self-perception, slowly disappears. People below power often soften criticism, avoid confrontation, or offer praise instead of honesty. The brain interprets this silence as agreement without friction. Beliefs, harden, assumptions go untested. The powerful person begins to mistake lack of resistance for validation, unaware that fear and dependency are filtering the information they receive. Over time, an echo chamber forms, not because the powerful person demands it, but because the system rewards it. Voices that agree are welcomed. Voices that challenge are avoided or removed. Reality becomes curated. This is where narcissism fully settles in, not as arrogance alone, but as a distorted self-image protected from correction. When humility is punished and dominance is praised, the mind adapts to survive at the top, even if that survival requires slowly losing touch with reality itself. The longer a person remains in power, the more their sense of safety becomes tied to control. Early on, power feels empowering, but over time it quietly shifts into something else: dependence. Psychologically, the brain adapts to elevated status by treating it as the new baseline. What was once extraordinary becomes normal, and losing it no longer feels like a change, it feels like a threat. This is where fragility begins, not on the outside, but internally. Power amplifies fear in subtle ways. With authority comes visibility, expectation, and constant evaluation. The brain becomes hyper-aware of potential loss of respect, relevance, influence, or identity. Neuroscience shows that the fear of loss activates stronger emotional responses than the pleasure of gain. This means powerful individuals often experience more anxiety about what could be taken away than satisfaction from what they already have. The higher the position, the steeper the psychological fall appears. As this fear grows, behavior changes. People in power may become defensive, not because they are guilty, but because uncertainty feels dangerous. Transparency feels risky. Admitting limits feels like exposure. The mind begins to protect control the way it would protect survival. This is why secrecy increases and trust narrows. Aggression, micromanagement, and rigidity are not signs of confidence. They are signals of fear trying to maintain order. Another deep psychological shift occurs when power becomes intertwined with self. Over time, identity fuses with position. The question, "Who am I?" quietly becomes, "What do I control?" When that happens, the idea of losing power feels like losing the self. Ordinary life begins to feel empty or meaningless by comparison. The brain resists this imagined future, clinging to authority as proof of value and existence. This is why people don't protect power because they love it. They protect it because they fear what remains without it. Letting go would require redefining identity, facing vulnerability, and returning to equality. Psychologically, it feels like stepping into uncertainty without armor. So, control is defended, not as a luxury, but as a lifeline. And the longer power is held, the harder it becomes to imagine life without it. Even if that power is slowly costing connection, peace, and reality itself. When power lasts long enough, it stops functioning as a role and begins to merge with identity. Psychologically, humans build their sense of self around what gives them meaning, status, and predictability. When authority consistently provides validation, influence, and direction, the brain rewires around it. Power is no longer something the person uses. It becomes the framework through which they understand who they are. At these stays, removing power does not feel like losing a job or position. It feels like losing the self. This fusion explains why criticism begins to feel deeply personal. Normally, feedback targets actions or decisions. But when identity is tied to control, any challenge is interpreted as an attack on worth and legitimacy. Neuroscience shows that threats to identity activate the same brain regions as physical danger. The body responds with defensiveness, anger, or withdrawal. Rational evaluation shuts down because the mind is no longer protecting an idea, it is protecting existence as it understands it. Loss, under these conditions, becomes psychologically devastating. Stepping down, failing, or being replaced does not register as a normal life transition. It feels like erasure. The brain equates loss of power with loss of relevance, safety, and meaning. This is why powerful individuals often resist exit, even when it would reduce stress or harm. Letting go would require rebuilding identity from the ground up, which the brain perceives as overwhelming and unsafe. Over time, this identity fusion narrows emotional range and flexibility. Curiosity fades, because curiosity requires openness to being wrong. Adaptability fades because change threatens stability. Relationships become strained because equality challenges hierarchy. The person may still function effectively on the surface, but internally they are rigid, guarded, and increasingly isolated. Power has shaped not just what they do, but what feels psychologically possible. This is why power changes people forever, not through intention, but through gradual psychological alignment. The person did not plan to become inseparable from control. It happened slowly, reinforced by rewards, fear, and adaptation. And once identity is built around power, walking away feels like stepping into nothingness. The tragedy is not that power corrupts, but that it convinces people they are nothing without it, even when they were whole, long before it arrived. The most dangerous thing about power is incorruption. It's normalization. The powerful person doesn't wake up one day and decide to change. They simply stop noticing that they already have. Here's the question no one asks. If power came to you quietly, with praise and authority, would you even notice the moment it changed you? Or would you believe you're the one person immune to it? Power doesn't announce itself when it takes something away. It smiles, it reassures, and by the time you realize what's missing, you're already someone else. Think carefully about who you follow, and even more carefully about who you become.